I really don't have too many complaints about the RLCS, but if there's one thing that I would like to see, it would be some separate events where we could see the top level players play 1s and 2s. Because every game mode has its appeal, and while in my opinion 3 should be the focus for pro level play, we shouldn't completely neglect the other 2 modes like we do currently. But luckily for us, Gamers8 is here to give us a taste of what that would look like with their crew battles format, where we get to see 1s, 2s, and 3s in display all within the same series. And this format gave us some very fun matches. So let's go ahead and get into the recap. Instead of going through the matches in chronological order like I usually do, this time we'll take it group by group. So naturally, let's start with Group A, because this group made things interesting very early on. The first 2 matches were no surprise, with Oxygen taking down Ground Zero in 4 games, and Optic beating Gaming Gladiators in 4 games, with that lone loss being OSM taking down AJ in the 1v1. And after that, we got to see our new world champions take the stage as they went up against Oxygen. Vitality came into this tournament as the heavy favorite, with their 3v3 abilities being very obvious, while also having one of the best 1s players in the world in Zen. But Oxygen came out in this match and surprised everybody, beating the world champions in 5 games, winning 2 of the 3v3 matches, and having Joreus beat Zen in the 1v1 by a score of 5-4. And now Vitality was in the lower bracket after just their first series. And on the other side of this group, we had G2 taking down Optic in a sweep, which included 2 3v3 victories and a dominant 1v1 showing by Atomic over AJ. Down in the lower bracket, Optic and Team Vitality got expected dominant wins, getting 3-0 sweeps over Ground Zero and Gaming Gladiators, and Vitality followed up their first sweep by getting another sweep over Optic. And to finish off the upper bracket, Oxygen finished off their impressive group stage by getting a 3-1 victory over G2, getting 1 victory in each of the game modes. So even with the disappointing spring split and world championship that this team had to feel really good about bouncing back like this and getting a great start to this tournament. And for the last match of this round, we had G2 go up against Team Vitality to see which of these 2 teams would join Oxygen in the playoffs. And Vitality used this opportunity to make another huge statement, getting their 3rd straight 3-0 sweep after losing to Oxygen to lock in their spot at the playoffs. Going into Group B, the first round here gave us 2 3-0 sweeps. One was pretty expected, with Twisted Minds taking down Elevate, but the other sweep was a pretty big surprise, with Monkeys, who finished in 12th place in Europe during the spring split, taking down one of South America's best teams in Ninjas in Pajamas. And after these 2 teams got off to great starts in the first round, they would have a much tougher time in the second round, where they would both end up losing in 4 games. Twisted Minds fell to Team BDS, despite managing to get an impressive win in 3v3, and Monkeys fell to Gen G with their only game win coming in 2v2. Down in the lower bracket, the 2 teams that lost in their first match in the upper bracket would do the same here, and they both ended up going home, with Elevate falling to Monkeys by a score of 3-1, and even though Nib put up a really good fight against Twisted Minds, sending the first 3 games to overtime, they ended up getting eliminated after losing this series in 5 games. And in the next round, Monkeys continued their impressive run by getting a victory over Twisted Minds in 4 games, as we lost our first Middle Eastern team from this Middle Eastern tournament. Back in the upper bracket, we had Team BDS go up against Gen G to see who would be the first team out of this group to make it into the playoffs. And to pretty much nobody's surprise, BDS dominated this series, getting a sweep over their North American counterparts, which included 2 shutout wins in the 3v3 matches. And to finish off this group, Monkeys only had to get 1 more win to finish off the underdog run and make it all the way into the top 8. But in order to do that, they would need to get through Gen G. And that proved to be asking for just a little bit too much, as Gen G got the win in 4 games and locked in their spot in the playoffs alongside BDS. Group C was probably the most interesting out of the 4 groups, because 3 of these teams came into this tournament with a new roster. Team Falcons had just replaced the Middle Eastern legend O'Khaled with the up-and-coming star Naupo, which may or may not be how you pronounce his name. And the other 2 teams with new rosters were FaZe Clan, who were playing with Chrome, filling in for Cypical, and then Pioneers were playing with Amphis, who was filling in for Hunter. And coincidentally, those 2 teams were playing each other in the first round. They each got a win in 3v3, but FaZe Clan dominated 2s and 1s to get the series win in 4 games. And in the other first round matchup, Fury got a 3-0 sweep over Limitless. The first match of the next round gave us another 3-0 sweep, with K-Corp beating FaZe in 3 close matches, including a really good 1v1 between Vatira and First Killer to go on to the next round. But after 2 straight sweeps, the next match we saw was the best out of the entire group stage, and maybe even the best in the entire tournament. Team Falcons and Furia were going up against each other, giving Falcons a chance at revenge after Furia eliminated them from last year's Gamers8 in a best of 7 reverse sweep in the semifinals. After trading the first 2 games, Team Falcons got an overtime win in Game 3 to go on to match point, and Game 4 gave us another legendary 1v1 between Yan and TRK. This game went all the way down to the final seconds, TRK's last shot looked like it was heading into the net, but with 0 seconds left on the clock, his shot hit the ground right on the goal line, and this series would officially be settled with one more threes match in Game 5. This last game was just as close as you would expect, but after almost 3.5 minutes of overtime, Team Falcons got their revenge for last year, as TRK bumped Yan on the goal line, and Napo put his shot under the crossbar, putting his team into the next round. In the lower bracket, Fury bounced back with a dominant 3-0 sweep over KC Pioneers, and then Limitless almost gave us one of the biggest upsets that we've ever seen. In the first 4 games, Limitless won both of the 3v3 matches to go up to match point, but FaZe Clan came out on top in 2s and 1s to send us into Game 5. Limitless was only one more 3s match away from making history for their region, but FaZe Clan stepped up and avoided the huge upset by getting a dominant win in Game 5, knocking out Africa's only representative. And this was followed by FaZe Clan getting knocked out themselves after they fell to Fury in 4 games, with that last game being a really tight 1v1 between Yan and First Killer. In the first playoff deciding match, Team Falcons continued their momentum from last round as they beat K-Corp in 4 matches, which included a 1s win for TRK over Vatira after K-Corp chose to play once following the first game loss. The match that would decide the playoff team from the lower bracket was also extremely entertaining, with K-Corp going up against Furia. This series was back and forth the entire way, and after a 1v1 win for Vatira over Yan in overtime, this series would be decided in Game 5. But Furia finished out the series by getting their third 3v3 win in 3 tries to send the Blue Wall home and lock in their spot in the playoffs. And now finally getting into the last group, we had Version 1 and Team Secret get off to hot starts. Version 1 got the victory over Suh in 4 games, including an 11-3 victory in the 1v1 for Daniel, and Team Secret got their own 3-1 win over Koi. But the teams that they had faced in the next round would be a lot tougher. And the first match of this round was Version 1 going up against Team Liquid. V1 got the win in 2s and 3s to go up 2-0 in the series, but Team Liquid bounced back with their own 3s win, and then another victory in the 1v1 between Atto and Daniel to set up the reverse sweep and take the series into Game 5. And in this last 3s match, Version 1 pulled off the upset, and they fought off the reverse sweep to move on to the next round. On the other side of the bracket, Team Secret had their own really tough matchup against Rule 1, but unfortunately, they wouldn't fare as well. After a Game 1 loss in 3s, Team Secret chose to go for the 1v1, trusting KV1's abilities against Rawas. And in response, Rawas took that game by a score of 13-4, and his team went on to sweep Team Secret. In the lower bracket, Sun nearly pulled off their own reverse sweep against Team Secret, but the South Americans got a shutout win in Game 5 to stay in the tournament. And on the other side, Koi got the win in the 2v2 match, but Team Liquid got the win in the series after 4 games to move on. And in the next round, Team Liquid got to move on again, getting another 4-game victory, this time over Team Secret. In the last match of the upper bracket, we had Version 1 going up against Rule 1, and while Version 1 got their 3rd win of the tournament in 2s, Rule 1 got the series win after Rawas dominated Game 4 against Daniel, winning that by a score of 8-1. And that result meant for the last match of this group, we would have Version 1 going up against Team Liquid one more time to see who would make it to the playoffs. And just like they did in the first matchup, Version 1 got the first 2 game wins to go up to series point, but then Team Liquid got the next 2 game wins, including a 10-4 victory in the 1v1 for Atto, getting them 1 game away from the reverse sweep once again. But just like they did last time, Version 1 got this last game by 1 goal, knocking Team Liquid out of the tournament and securing their spot in the top 8 at Gamers8 after a very disappointing end to their RLCS season. And now with the group stage out of the way, we head into the playoffs. And the first match that we got was Oxygen against Version 1. 2 teams with disappointing ends to their RLCS seasons who are trying to make up for that by continuing their run here. Oxygen was up 2-1 heading into Game 4, and with that next game being a 1s match, Version 1 gave us a pretty big surprise by sending out Beast Mode for that match instead of Daniel, who took pretty bad losses in his last 2 1v1 matches. And with Joyous being one of the best 1s players in the entire world, Beast Mode had his work cut out for him. But he came in clutch and got a very impressive 7-3 win over Joyous to tie the series at 2-2. And after Version 1 took Game 5, Oxygen had a tough choice in Game 6 with their backs against the wall. Joyous just lost the 1v1 to Beast Mode, so you couldn't fault them if their confidence was shaken in that. But at the same time, Version 1 hadn't lost a single 2s match for the entire tournament, so going up against them in that would probably be even more scary. So they chose to stick with Joyous, and they ran back the 1v1 for Game 6. And that choice looked very scary at first because Beast Mode scored in the first 9 seconds and he held on to the lead for almost the entire game. But the key word there is almost, because with 37 seconds left, Joyous tied up the game and we went in overtime, where Joyous would once again score, giving Oxygen a clutch victory and sending our first series of the playoffs into Game 7. But Version 1 ended up being the team that got it done, and they won this Game 7 by a score of 2-1 to move into the semifinals. And the next playoff match wasn't quite as close, and with Team Falcons taking on Gen G, Falcons continued their really impressive form from the group stage and they won the series 4-1, only dropping one threes match in the process to knock out Gen G and set up a match with version 1 in the semifinals. After that, we had the reigning Gamers8 champions Furia go up against the World Championship runners-up Team BDS. BDS had to be seen as the favorite coming into the series, but Furia still gave them a really tough fight. BDS won the series in 5 games, but all 4 of their wins came in overtime, including all 3 of the threes matches going into overtime, and the ones match between Monkey Moon and Yan going into overtime too. And this continued Monkey Moon's really good ones form, because he was now undefeated in that game mode, getting a win over Venom, Chronic, and now Yan. And the last match of this round was by far the most anticipated, with Team Vitality going up against Rule 1. And the hype got started early in Game 1. Rule 1 and Vitality set the record for the longest overtime in LAN history at the Spring Major, going for over 12 minutes. And while this one wasn't quite as long, it was still a good one, going for over 5.5 minutes, and this time Rule 1 got the overtime goal to get the victory. And after this great threes match, Vitality picked ones for the next game mode, giving Zen a chance at revenge against Rawas after his Middle Eastern rival ended his 1v1 show match winning streak that started with his debut. And in the back and forth match that lived up to everybody's expectations, there would be no revenge this time, because Rawas got the win in the 1v1 by a score of 8-6, proving that he is still not like the rest of them. Also, no lie, this is one of the hardest tweets of all time. But from this point on, Rule 1 ran away with this series. They dominated the next threes match by a score of 5-0, and while the 2v2 was tightly contested and went all the way to overtime, Rule 1 got one last win to go into the next round and to be the second Middle Eastern team to make it to the semifinals. And for the first match of those semifinals, and the first match of Championship Sunday, the other Middle Eastern team in Team Falcons would go up against version 1 to try to make it into the grand finals. And with the Middle Eastern crowd cheering them on top of the lingering memory of last year's Gamers8, where they lost to Fury in the semifinals after getting reverse swept in a best of 7, you know that Falcons really wanted to win this series. They got off to a good start by taking game 1, but then version 1 took control. They won the 2v2 and the following 3v3 both by a score of 1-0, and then after Beast Mode's really impressive win over Joyous in ones, he got another really impressive win here by beating TRK by a score of 7-3. And after Falcons won game 5, version 1 got to pick the game mode for game 6, and to nobody's surprise, they picked 2v2, where Beast Mode and Daniel went on to beat Rule 1's twins Rawas and Killers, which might be pronounced Kalirs, but I'm not getting into that right now. And with this victory, Daniel and Beast Mode were now 7-0 in 2v2 matches for the entire tournament. And more importantly, they now officially locked in their spot in the grand finals, where they would face off against the winner of Team BDS and Rule 1. BDS got the game 1 victory in threes, and for game 2, Rule 1 chose to go for 1v1, putting Rawas up against Monkey Moon in a battle between 2 players who were still undefeated in ones for this tournament. But after a flip reset goal to take the lead with just 10 seconds left, Rawas got the victory to end Monkey Moon's 1v1 streak and continue his own. And from this point on, this series was all Rule 1. They won 3 straight games to close out the series, including a massive 7-3 victory over Monkey Moon and Seiko in twos, locking in their own spot in the grand finals and setting up a rematch with version 1. The rematch started off with a game 1 victory for version 1 in threes, giving Rule 1 their choice of the game mode for game 2. And seeing as how version 1 was undefeated in twos, and Rawas was undefeated in ones, they of course chose to lean on him. Last time these teams faced off in a 1v1, Rawas got a clear victory over Daniel, but this time he was going up against Beast Mode, and this proved to be a lot tougher for him, with this 1v1 going into overtime. But Rawas kept his undefeated streak alive, and he scored the overtime goal to take down Beast Mode and tie the series up at 1-1. This set up a really important game 3 for Rule 1, because game 4 was guaranteed to be twos, and since version 1 was undefeated in that mode, Rule 1 didn't want to go into that match with a deficit in the series. But unfortunately for them, that's exactly what happened when version 1 took game 3 by a score of 3-1. And in the next game, version 1 emphatically proved that they are the best 2v2 team in the entire tournament, as they stayed undefeated and they beat Rule 1's twins by a score of 5-0. And now they only needed one more win to be Gamers8 champions. And that threes match in game 5 gave us one last overtime. But the tournament was ended when Daniel and Beast Mode connected for one last goal to give version 1 the victory and officially crown this team as Gamers8 champions. At the start of the RLCS Spring Split, where they brought in Daniel, this team had all the expectations in the world, and they showed their ability by winning a regional together. But inconsistencies and disappointing performances kept them out of the Spring Major, and consequently out of the World Championship. But after that bad start as a team, this has to be the best consolation prize that you could ever ask for. And besides, the World Championship in Dusseldorf was a Mickey Mouse tournament anyways. And now that V1 are Gamers8 champions, this is now also one of the best Rocket League tweets that we've ever seen. Now at the end of this tournament, and RLCS also being over, we probably won't have any big tournaments coming our way for a while. But now with that being the case, that means Roster Mania has officially begun. So I won't be going anywhere, because we'll still have plenty of stuff to talk about. But that's a topic for another video. And until then, as always, thanks for watching.